Hey, happy day.
Yes, happy day.
Happy day. Happy day. I am so excited about this session today. This lives on two places. Like I said, the lucky people that get to watch this on Facebook or will be in our studio audience, and then we'll have this will live again on the second half podcast. And so I am so excited to wrap up a very interesting year, 2021, right? Very interesting year. I had James Shaw on one of these, and he called 2020 part two, and he's calling 2022 2020 part three. I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah. No, this year has been honestly for me, it's been harder than 2020 was. Which has been interesting. But yeah, it has been quite the year. A lot of good happened this year, but then there was a good amount of hard. So
right. Yeah, it's interesting. And, I just want to welcome you to the show, Sarah Reynolds. You are somebody that I just have always adored, and I just have so much respect and admiration for what you achieve every day. And I just want to get the world to get to know you that maybe doesn't know you. That's why I love doing this and sharing great human beings out in the world that I feel like play to win at a high level in life. And that doesn't mean it's easy for you, right? At all.
no,
But what
no,
you are
no.
achieving, girl, man, I just want to welcome you to the show, Sarah Reynolds.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here, and I like to win. So the name is perfect.
Right? Because
Perfect. I'm like, yeah.
I love it. And then the podcast title is the second half, which is right when you think of any game, Sarah, right? Like you can come out of the gate. A lot of people come out of the gate strong, right? But after halftime, what happens, right? And for me, you're somebody that
Yep.
you've had this trajectory of going upward, and then it's like you're hockey sticking, like shooting to the moon right now on kind of the numbers you're seeing, even though it may not, when you stop and think about all that you're achieving right now, it's pretty incredible. But I just applaud you because you're somebody that leans in definitely in the second half for sure. So I love it. So let's introduce the audience. Who are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself, just like how long you've been in the business. Talk about your team, kind of. Let's just give a little intro to people that may not know the amazing Sarah Reynolds.
Yeah, so I'm Sarah. I lead a multiple teams in multiple locations serving buyers and sellers. Our original location is outside of the DC metro. And that's when we first started doing ink blot expansion. We are now in 6 different markets. And this year we will help over 2,000 families, $1 billion in sales volume, and 29 million in gross commission income. And it's about network wide, a little bit less than 200 team members across 8 different departments with one goal, which is to serve buyers and sellers at a very, very high level. And so that is about me on the professional side. And then I am a proud wife, a proud mom. I've got 3 babies, 8, 6, and 2 years old. And also on both the passion project side and also ties into work. I have the honor of being a co-host Empire Building podcast, and then also co-owner of Her Best Life, which is an organization about amplifying the lives and voices of women in business around the world. So that's Sarah in a few sentences. So
Yeah, and there's so much more to it, but just in a nutshell, you can tell she's an achiever. And what I love about your story is you're one of those people that takes people with you, right? You're very much
yes.
a leader of you're bringing others with you on your journey and your story, and so that they can go on theirs. And I believe that drives you probably more than anything. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, a rising tide lifts all ships. And honestly, how in my mind, what raises the tide are people. So people, sometimes a new system can raise the tide as well. And so, but most times when you surround yourself by the right people, you end up rising, they rise as well, right? So like when the tide rises, all the ships rise. And so my philosophy sort of is the more we can raise the tide with different peoples, with people with different strengths and talents that they bring to the table, all the ships, all of our lives rise up at the same time. So absolutely.
I love that. Well, you don't get to $1 billion in closed volume, right? Or you just don't get to that without amazing people that believe in your journey and are on the journey with you, right? It just doesn't happen. And so, I think it's just incredible to see these numbers. And we'll talk a little bit more about your expansion, because I think there's just a great story that Gary Keller was actually talking about it's been mentioned at ESO last week. It's been mentioned in the masterminds, just some incredible results from partnering with you. And I want to kind of go there too, but let's start, because you said you love playing to win. You have an attitude of a winning mindset. What does playing to win look like for you, my dear?
I think so. I was thinking about this, and I love to win. And so much of what I do is to win. And I was thinking, okay, but let's define it, right? Which is what the question is. So how do you define playing to win? For me, so much has to do with people's lives being changed. So like, I think when I first started out, so much went about how to make sure that our buyers and sellers win, right? Right. And so making sure that we are providing the highest level of value to where when we're providing huge value, that our buyers and sellers win more than they will working with another team or working with another realtor, right? So that's first and foremost, is how you win is impacting people's lives. And so at the core of what I do is making sure that the people we serve, which are buyers and sellers, right, that they win. Okay. So that's number one. And then through that, what ends up happening through leading, right? My organization is now over 200 amazing humans. Incredible. And every day I get, it's crazy.
Every market center.
Yes. Yeah, I know.
Like average, almost the average size Keller Williams office, right? It's just a little bigger than that. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. Gary said to me once, you're not far off from KWRI. And I was like,
that's right.
Whoa. Like I didn't even realize that at the time. But I think for me, every day it's making sure that I'm doing the best I can to ensure my people win. And how they define winning, right? So like, we talk a lot about on our podcast, having a big business, but also having a big life. And right. For me, so much of what I do, so much of what our team does is how to create, yes, the big business, but how do they define winning in their life? What are they wanting to accomplish in their life? And so for me, playing to win is ensuring that I'm doing everything I can to ensure that everyone around me is winning. And what happens is when you wake up every day with that mindset, you end up winning too, because honestly, there's nothing more fulfilling in life than to serve other people and to help them get what they want. And so that's really how I define playing to win is doing my best to ensure that everyone around me and those that I serve get what they want.
I love that answer so much. With you, I would love to talk a little bit about expansion. We have this great thing in Keller Williams called expansion, right? And that we never want to be the ceiling on any of our top people like you, where you feel stuck with Keller Williams. So you have to leave because you can't grow with us. Instead, we want to be seen as the distribution, if I could say it. We want to be seen, thank you. We want to be seen as the distribution network for our top people. We love our top people, right? And one of the stories, like, let's talk about that. You have what's unique about you. And it's not the first time that a mega team has joined another mega team, right? It's not the first time. But what we've seen with you is recently you had a mega agent who's amazing. And we won't say their name. Somebody I know personally, I think is amazing and was doing, so the story goes, about 2.5 million GCI. That's a big business. That's a big business. Most number one agents in any Keller Williams or any real estate company anywhere are not doing 2.5 million GCI. It's a huge number. And yet, and the team leader of that person for the office was in ESO and mentioned that this person has been doing about $700,000 to $800,000 GCI per month trending. Yeah. So they're going to be on track to do like 9 to 10.
Yes.
Because of the partnership with you. Let's talk about that a little bit. Can we talk about that? Because that just like blows my mind. Like, that's amazing. That is so amazing, because it's changing her life. It's changing so many things. How does that magic happen? Tell us a little bit about that. Why do you think that's working so well?
Well, I think first and foremost, any partnership, and that's what it is with our expansion, right? It's a partnership.
Right.
Any partnership has to be unified on values. And so first and foremost, I think the key thing for us, and also our expansion, I mean, obviously with this story, but there's many other stories as well.
Yes.
I think the bottom line is that we need to be unified on values. When we're unified on values, and then after you're unified on values, you can figure out how can we use, every human, it's remarkable for me when I think about the way that sort of God designed us, right? Every human is so unique. There's not one. Gallup says that it's 1 in 94 million of a chance to find someone that has the same strengths that you do.
Wow.
1 in 94 million. Okay. Basically impossible, right?
Yeah.
To find someone that is just like Melanie, that's just like Gary, that's just like Sarah, right? Like that, God only packaged one person, and that's each of us, right? With the unique set of strengths. And I think for me, what has been really important is through partnerships is making sure that each person is working within their strength zone to get the most out of them. And so when I come together with a partner, we have a system that is proven. We have a system that we know leads to helping more families, that gets these results that they're getting, as long as each person is working within their strength zone. So I think a big part of the success that we've been having, as well as recently had, is having someone that can actually work within what they were created to work within, right? I mean, I think so many times we try to do all the things, right? I know obviously the one thing, it speaks about that a lot, right? But
it doesn't say do all the things, right? It doesn't say do all the things.
Yes. Yeah. There's certain things that some of us do so well, so naturally, they're like superpowers, right? They come so natural for us. And every day I wake up and I'm like, how can I make sure that each of my team members is feeling like they can do what they were created to do? And I know that when they do that, what ends up happening is you get the best out of them. We get the best out of the team. And so what you see is each partner being able to fulfill sort of their God-given mission in their life, and having other people surround them to take on the things that they aren't made to do. They just weren't created to do. And so that's really a lot of our success with expansion is just, multiple of our partners haven't wanted to, haven't felt like they have the, skills isn't the right word, but the strength zone, right? To create the systems and to create the backing and to create the lead gen funnels and all of those things that our team has done. They want to go do what they were made to do, which is be out there selling and recruiting the talent that should be with us and living their best life. And so I think that has been sort of the secret to our expansion, is just really getting everyone within their superpower zone.
I love that. And I would say with all the agents that I've worked with over the last, 15 years with Keller Williams, it's really interesting to see when people work in their gift zone and they surround themselves with talent that fills the other stuff, boom, magic, right? And then the others that don't, that's where the burnout and the E2P and the ceiling and all that happens, right? And so to me, it sounds like it's kind of like when Tim Heil, who's been on here before too, and Tim I've known since he was about a year in the business, when he founded Homeward here in Austin. I'm sure you've probably heard of that.
Of course, yes.
Right? It was like, what problem can I solve? So he creates Homeward because we have an inventory, it's a lead generation, people would say issue, but you know what I mean? We had a shortage of listings. So how do I create more listings? So he created Homeward so that could be the bridge loan, right? It was so brilliant. And so to me, what you're doing reminds me of that. to the mega agent, right? You're saying, listen,
Yes.
you're probably well, for sure, you're very gifted. If you're a top agent, you're gifted with people, you're gifted with drive. And then let me take that off off of you, because you seem like were you always a organized or a structured person, or did you have to fail forward through that?
No, that's who I am. That's definitely one of my strengths, right? I think my number 6 strengths is called a ranger.
Nice.
I can arrange the way things should go in the process behind it to then it works with my significant strength to get the best out of something.
Love that.
And so a lot of what you see our system and our processes do is that. And I think so many times, I mean, our industry, depending on the year, our industry has like an 85 to 95% fail rate. So when they look at like the licensees, the agents that got licensed 3 years ago, depending on the year, 80 to 95% of them aren't licensed 3 years later. And I always hear that and I'm always like, oh, it puts a pit in my stomach, because so many times I talk to agents that are excited. They just got their license and all these things. But what they don't realize is that you signed up to be in an industry that you're expected to be good at everything.
Right.
And that's just not, any one human is not good at everything. And so what ends up happening is that they struggle because they're trying to do all the things.
Yeah.
And it's impossible to do all the things. It's impossible to be good at all of the things. And so I think I came in, joined my mom. She had a very small business. It was her and an assistant at the time. They did about 300,000 in gross commission income for that year.
What was that, Sarah? What year was that?
2006.
Oh my gosh. Okay. We started the same year. That's awesome.
Oh, nice. Yay. So 15 years. This is a big anniversary this year.
Happy anniversary to us.
Yes. Woohoo. Yes. It's a lot of amazing people got their license that year. I've met many of us. But yeah, so I think that if you look at just math, like I always tell my team, I'm like, I think that's an industry problem. It's not a person problem, because when you talk to these amazing humans, they've got the heart in the right place. Most of them, their heart is in the right place, which they want to help buyers and sellers. They don't know how to do it. Right. I think so many times mega agents, the same thing. Their heart is right. They want to build, they want to have a massive business, and they reach a ceiling of what they can do on their own. That's the commonality amongst all of our partners, is that they all built great businesses. They all reached a ceiling. And what E2P says is, and a lot of people focus on the person. So they're like, what E2P says is that you need a person to typically break through. It's not just a person.
No,
it's a person and or a system or process to break through.
Right.
And I think a lot of people skip over that, because I think obviously people is more fun to talk about typically.
Right. Because they think, oh, they'll do it. Right. I'll just hire that person. Then I'll have my breakthrough. Well, sometimes it's a system, or it's a person and a system, right?
Yeah.
Or a model.
Yes. Yeah. I love Brene Brown's definition of leadership is a leader is someone that sees the potential in a person or process and has the courage to develop it. And I think so many times we talk about leadership with people, and what I have found, and when I read that, I was like, oh, it resonated with me, because that's how I have viewed leadership, right? I just had my one-on-one with my chief growth officer, and, the whole time I'm like, you must provide clarity on process with your people. That is the job of the leader. And I think a lot of times we don't focus on that. We focus on, well, that they're failing. They're not talent. Okay. But instead looking at yourself, are you leading them to make sure that you have the courage to, yes, develop them and the process to give them clarity on how to win. So
girl, I love that. You said you must create clarity on the process with your people, or did you say, is that what you said? Cause that was so good.
Yes. Yeah. A leader's job is to give clarity on the process so they know how to win. They know how to win. This is the one thing that I see so many abdicate and or delegate it, right? They think, okay, that's not my job. I'm not an ops person. And I understand, I totally get it. And I know that I am I've got that arranger strength. I understand that. And with a lot of our partners, what they've said is like, okay, we're going to partner with someone that has the processes, right? That has the clarity. Let's not recreate it. It took me 15 years to figure this out. Right. So like we can move faster if we just come together. But bottom line is understand that a leader's job is to provide clarity.
I love that. I love that quote so much. I wrote it down. And I'll probably tag it with this. That was really good. So I think about, I love that you talk about the struggle of having to be the master, the jack of all trades, master of none, right? And and think about those new agents that do fail and get out of the industry, right? And they're trying to be all things to everything. And it makes me, and some of the top agents, that's where they're struggling, like we said before, and that's where your partnership comes in just great because you've really nailed the systems. Imagine if you went to your doctor's office, right? And you go see a specialist and he's the one that checks you in or reminded you about your appointment and that, right? Like it would be weird. It would be weird. So why are we judging ourselves that our strength zone is over here, which is empire building or whatever your strength zone is, or if it's operations, but don't try to be all things. And I love that you said for helping your people win is helping them set up themselves up for success in their strength zone and what they're really good at and what brings them joy. Right. And that's what this is all about. And I love that you call them partners too. That's really cool. I love that.
Yep. Well, they absolutely are. And I think you for sure get someone said to me the other day, retirement is doing what you love whenever you want. And I was like, well, I guess I'm retired. I was like, I didn't. And so I'm like, I'm one of the youngest retired people at 37 years old, because every day I get up and I get to do what I love, but I want that for all my people. I want them to feel like they get up and they get to do what they're naturally good at. It comes so natural to them, right? That it doesn't feel like work. It's just fun. There's joy that comes from it. They walk away every day on their way home full of joy because they know they won. Like when you are working within your strength zone, it's hard not to win, because you were created to do whatever that is. And so every day you're walking away like, I won today. I accomplished what I was supposed to do. I did a good job at it, right? And I wasn't trying to do all these things that I just wasn't designed to do. And so much of playing to win comes down to that. Is making sure people are in their strength zones.
I love that. And, you think about days where you're like, man, today was the best day, right? So I think everybody that's listening to this call, whether you're in real estate or not, it's like, whatever it is, it's like, man, that was a great day. Why was it a great day? Because you're probably living your passion. You're probably living what you were born to do, right? And living in what's authentic to you and what brings you joy, right? And so if you're one of those people that aren't feeling that way and every day is like a struggle, you're probably not. You either need a system, a model, a person, or you're in the wrong environment, right? And so, Sarah, I'm sure you've had people in your world. I mean, my gosh, 200 people, like I said, that's like a Keller Williams Market Center. That is bigger than now it's bigger, but the first office I led in Nevada was 170 agents. So 200 is a big number. It's a big number. What do you do when you have somebody, because if you really have created an environment and a culture where everybody's feeling good and in their strength zone, you can feel when somebody's not, right?
Yes. Yep.
And how do you self-discover them out of that when it's kind of obvious they're not thriving and maybe they don't recognize it themselves that this maybe isn't the right match for them?
Yeah, I think, well, there's two things. And I think one is talked about more than the other. Okay. But the first thing, we had an office tour yesterday and had a guest in, and we were showing them some of our system and some of the things that we were doing. And it was just sitting on in one of my growth leaders' office. There was a list of all of our values on their desk. But the list of values has rankings. It had rankings next to them. And they said, what is that? And we were like, oh, well, every 12-week year. So we follow the 12-week year system. Every quarter, we sit down with our team members and they grade themselves on living up to our values. And then the leader grades them as well. So I think,
I love that.
There's two separate things here. Like if someone's struggling, I think it's sort of your question here. I think number one is it a value struggle? Because that's a different conversation. So we hire and we fire around our values. So we hire and we fire around our values. And how we do that is we make sure, A, there's clarity around our values. There's clarity around how we define our values. And then we're constantly going back to them, right? So what we're doing is we're constantly saying, okay, how do you rate yourself on integrity? Did you do what you were supposed to do? What you said you were going to do? That's how we define integrity. Like, you did what you said you were going to do. How did you the last 12 weeks? How did you do? Right. So we're going through those things. If we find that they consistently are not matching to our values, which is really our heart of our company, we then have a hard conversation, because that's not a matter of them switching seats on the bus. Because values is not something you can train. Like I can train every position.
Right.
My ops leader will disagree. I can train every position, which she's right on that. Okay. But I can train someone how to sell houses. I can train someone on how to convert a seller. I can train a leader on how to run a sales meeting that leads to more sales. Okay. I can train on all of those things. I cannot train on values. Yeah. And so for us, it's like, number one, are we hiring around values? Sometimes it's a value misalignment. Mm-hmm. And I think you just can't, if it's a value misalignment, you just cannot, there's nowhere to go from there. I found if you are not aligned in values, I just have found there's nothing more to do other than this is not the place. And so if it's that, we coach them and consult them to a place where they can be better, do better. Right. If it's a job item, we're not getting the best of them, out of their job. First and foremost, I have found that most times, there's some personal stuff going on. So a big part of us with our leadership team is making sure we know what's going on in someone's personal world. That's a little controversial. Some people think that that's not a leader's role. I believe it is. We say it all the time that we do life together. A big part of life is home. A big part of life is family. A big part of life is our health. And so sometimes something is happening in someone's life that's impacting their work. So we first make sure, okay, are we good? Are we good there? Is there someone, we're not there to be their therapist, right? But is there someone we can direct them to help them if there's another circle of their life where they're struggling? And then quickly after that, we dive into their work, and making sure that they're in a position where they feel like they have clarity, that they know what that they're able to work within their strengths. And then the fun part about getting to the size that we are is if we match on values, right? If we're helping them overcome some personal things, and if they're not in the right seat, like, the awesome thing is we have other seats. And so we have every department, and sort of the avatar for who really shines in that department. And so a lot of times we switch people to a different seat. Good to Great, they talk about that. That's a old but amazing business book. It's just making sure they're on the right seat, after you've made sure they're on the right bus, right?
Right, exactly. As long as they're on the right bus, right? As long as they're on the right bus.
Yep. Yeah.
And if they're not, then we self-discover them out of your organization.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, the conversation on that's pretty simple. It's just, we want you to have a leader and to be an organization that gets the best out of you. And so I'm here to help you find that. This is not it. We're not for everybody, right? We are highly systematized, highly process oriented, right? If someone is just wants to be super entrepreneurial and fly by the seat of their pants every day, that's not us. That is not us. Right. And so there are businesses that are like that. And so we would guide them and consult them to those. Right. And so I think that that's the thing there is making sure that we're putting them in a position to win. And sometimes that means they need to get on a different bus.
I love that. Let's talk about, what are some of the things for you mentioned 2021 was actually a harder year for you than 2022. You want to talk about that, or than 2020? You want to talk about that at all?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
What was harder about it for you?
I think so many leaders in 2020, I'm assuming can sort of relate to this. I think so many of us do really well with our back against the wall.
Mm.
Like get our back up against the wall and we will figure it out. We will fight. We will figure it out, like put on our armor every day and we go to battle, right? I think when 2020 hit, it was all of 2020 was that. I mean, we were all like back against the wall, having to figure out something that no one knew what they were doing. Like not one person. Okay.
Right.
There were not world pandemic millionaire real estate agent books. Like how like there's just not, like, I mean, all of us were figuring it out as we went and making sure that we led our team through it. I mean, I think, in the beginning, it was so much fear of the unknown, so much fear how that was going to impact the real estate our businesses. I remember at the time my payroll was like 150,000 a pop. So that's twice a month. Right now it's 250. It's crazy. But being so scared, like, am I going to let my people down? How am I going to navigate through these really rough waters? And every day I would wake up and I'm like, I'm going to do it. Like I would tell my team, I don't know what I'm doing. None of us do, but I know that we're the team to figure it out. And so every day I woke up and I was like, we're ready to fight. We're ready to, like, and fight's not the right word, but
right, but we're going to take it on, right?
Yes, like, and I'm all for being the leader to like charge into whatever it was. And so it was a year of that. And I think the truth is that you can only do that for a short period of time. That I don't think we're designed to fight all, be that forever. And so I think 2021 for me, it was like, I didn't process any of it as it was happening. At Her Best Life, we had a therapist come in and she explained the what happens when you go through a trauma. Mm-hmm. And what defines a trauma. And I'm sitting there and I'm reading it and I'm like, this was 2020 for me.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was trauma. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know, and so typically when someone goes through a trauma, they need to process. You need to go through, process it. Many times you need to involve a therapist. I never thought in a million years that would come out of my mouth. Like I used to hear people that needed to therapy or needed someone to talk to. And I would be like, oh, what's wrong with them? Like, honestly, that's the truth. Yeah. This year, I'm like, can I get more therapy? I'm like, oh my goodness. I'm like, because we need to process through like what the fear that we went through, the emotions that we went through, just the fact that we made it, we figured it out, right? Taking time to even celebrate it. Most of us didn't do that.
Yeah.
Most of us just went on. My number 3 strength is achiever. And so the problem with achievers is you don't celebrate typically because you're on to the next thing, achieving the next thing.
Exactly.
And so much of 2020, we needed to pause and we needed to say, I guided one of the largest real estate organizations through a world pandemic. I grew, I kept every job. I wasn't doing that. I wasn't listing out. This is what we did as a leadership team. We did that. And so it's been, I think a lot of the armor had to come off in 2021 and we had to start processing it and we had to start living more, not on edge because you cannot live like that all the time. So
and that's so important to do that, right? Because that's the reality of it. Because you can't hold on. I totally relate to what you just said, right? Because we're here on the front and it's for our people and you have to show up every day. And then at some point you're like, ooh, I got to process this, right? Whether I want to or not, I've got to, the whole world went through this. And so you have to say, wow, we can really be proud of ourselves. Look what we still, with all of that happening, look what we accomplished. And that's such an important piece of that, right? Is honoring that. So what do you think for that's probably setting you up for a better 2022 though. Part of my question is, what do you think agents can prepare for to really have a great year in 2022?
I think, for leading, I think, I know it's cliche and it's said a lot, but you can't pour from an empty vessel. And I think so many times, 2020 was a year of us giving it our all and we were empty. I mean, most of us were empty. And I think number one is if you have not taken time to fill up yourself, like number one, I give permission. Number two, it's not selfish. Like I think for for so long, I thought it was like being selfish to take time for myself, to take time for what I need, what I knew I needed. Right. And it's like, but it's not, it's actually the opposite of selfish. I cannot get up every day and do what I need to do if I'm not first taking care of my health, making sure that I don't get that, making sure I get the energy from my family, right? All the things that are important to me that give me joy, including work. Okay. But outside of work that give me joy. And I think number one in preparation is make sure that you take the time between Christmas and New Year's. I'm shutting everything off. I'm focusing on my family. We got a beach house, and I'm just going to be Sarah, the mom, Sarah, the wife. I'm going to think, I'm going to do a lot of journaling like that. Number one is make sure you do that. Everyone needs to do that. Leading, like you need to do that more. One of the books I read in 2020 was The Road Less Stupid, who is the author's in Austin.
Right.
And he talks about, I have like 3 to 4 different coaches. That's how many I need. I'm a hot mess, but I have lots of different coaches, right? But in the book, it says you can have consultants, you can have coaches, you can have all these things. At the end of the day, your business better than anyone. But many times we don't take the time to pause, to think, to write, right? And so I think number one is do that. Take the time to pause. It's okay to be silent. It's okay not to have something you're doing other than sitting with a notepad and a pen. And so number one, that to prepare for 2022, do not go into the new year without some time of pause. And so number one, that, and then through that is like having clarity around your goals and what you want to accomplish. I mean, we're mid-December now, so hopefully you've done that already. If you haven't, it's not too late. It's not too late, but getting clarity around what your goals are, and then getting clarity around what are the action items that you need to focus on to reach those goals. And every year it's the same. Like this isn't some secret. There's not some secret potion here, but it's really having clarity around what the goal is. Being willing to say no to anything that distracts you from the goal, which is the hardest part, right? But
that's a really good point. Yeah.
But knowing what your key actions are that will get you there. So
yeah, you also, and Sarah, you also mentioned the 12-week year, and I love that because we're doing a 12-week year event here in January, starting with that.
Cool.
And then bringing the whole market center with us, right? Like let's all have conversations about goal setting in the now, because so many people, I've heard you say it, I've heard other top people say it, that they started, Shannon Steer is the coach that's going to come in and teach it. And
cool.
Her team went from 18 million to 40 million just by doing that, right? It's just by being purposeful. So how long have you been doing that with your team?
So we're about to finish our 4th 12-week year. So we started in January of this year, was our first 12-week year. It has been huge for us. I lead a team of achievers. So on the Strength Finders, out of 200 people, the number one strength as a team is achiever. Which what I liked about the 12-week year. So 12-week year is, in a calendar year, there's 4 of them. Okay. But then that leaves 4 weeks because there's 52 weeks in a year, right? Right. What I've loved about it is you get to take off when you reach your goal. So when you hit your goal, you get a week off. That's what those 4 weeks are. You either get a week off or you take the week to make it up, to catch up. And for achievers, we need that. Yeah, because we just go on to the next thing and we don't pause. What has been nice about the 12-week year is so many of us, once we hit our goal, we say, oh, we earned our week off, right? And so it gives us permission. Yeah. I know it sounds silly, but it gives us permission to take some time off and to actually celebrate the achievement versus just moving on to the next thing. I'm
I
a big
love
believer in the 12-week year. It aligns perfectly with the one thing. It aligns perfectly with so many of the foundational principles and systems of Keller Williams. And so that's what's been really cool is like the alignment between those two. So
I love that. And I love that you added it. It's giving the achiever mindset the permission to pause, right? And like
yes,
get to that finish line and then like, woo, we earned our, because you do, an achiever does have to plan that time to
oh yeah,
refuel. You'd need that because
yes,
like you said, you're on to the next thing. I completely relate to that. Completely relate
yes,
to
yep,
that.
yep.
Let's talk real quick about your podcast. Congratulations at Inman, the podcast you ladies do, Empire Building, #1 podcast in 2021. That's
Woo!
exciting.
Oh my goodness. I will never forget. I was out to dinner with one of our locations and when I got the text message saying, did you see this? And yeah, it has been so exciting. I mean, when Keller Williams asked us to take this on, we didn't really know what we were doing. I mean, the four of us had never done a podcast. Via had been on the radio before, and I have too. I've been on the radio as well, but we had never had a consistent podcast. And so it has been so exciting. I mean, honestly, our listeners did that. So we didn't do it. Our listeners made sure Inman knew that they felt like we were the podcast of the year. And when it's humbling when you look at the list.
Yes.
Like I didn't see the list at first. And then when I was sent the list, I just paused and I was like, wow. I mean, some podcasts that I listen to every week and I admire so much. And I'm like, wow, our listeners said that, we were the podcast of the year. It was just so humbling. So humbling.
Talk about making an impact, right? At a larger scale, right? Well, what's come from that podcast, if you've not yet downloaded Empire Building Podcast, it's great. We have it on our website here at the Market Center because we want people to think like a CEO, Empire Building, and then of course this one, the second half, right?
Of course. Yeah, I think, yeah. So when you go to look for it, it's yellow, so you can't really miss it. That's the picture. I think when we first sat out to do it, the four of us, our first call, we were like, okay, the nice thing was KW gave us freedom to make it into what we felt the market needed, the listeners needed. And, so many times, those that listen to podcasts typically are readers as well, meaning they're learners. And I think books are amazing. A big part of my mission on it was to take books and knowledge of books and make it real. Like, okay, let me tell you how this really works. And like some things that we learned by implementing this part of the book. And so being transparent and vulnerable, open about our failures. I think so many times, we see each other on social media and it can be so perfect looking. And that we have it all together. And we wanted to make sure that our listeners knew we're hot messes. We are feeling forward really fast. And being willing to share our failures. And then making sure that it's not just about having a big business. I mean, empire building, many times when you hear that, you think big business. And we had to tie in a big life. Having a full empire, a big empire is having a big life, not just your life, creating big lives for your people as well. And so that's really what the three things is vulnerability, transparency, talking about failure. And I guess four things is making sure that we add in that big life part of it. And so I've been proud. And honestly, my co-host Wendy, Say, and Via, I learn so much from them. I listen every week. Sometimes when you're doing the podcast, you're thinking about what you're going to say next.
Right. And you're
not
missing out what you're hearing. Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
And you're not listening. And so when I listen, I have my notepad, just like all of our listeners hopefully do. And I'm taking notes and I'm like, oh, wow, Say, that was so good. I learned so much from you. And even though I was right there when she said it the first time, I didn't hear it. So
I totally relate. Absolutely.
Yep.
And you hear it differently when you go back and listen, 100%. So, okay. So you juggle massive business, you obviously, right? The listeners know that. And you also raise a beautiful family. Like, let's talk about that balance just for a little bit. I know you talk about that in Empire Building a lot with the other female, awesome business owners on there. So how do you manage it? Because it looks so easy for you. I mean, you and your husband have a great relationship. You've got beautiful babies, and you seem to do really, how are you doing that?
Well, I think, my dad always says, someone, he said, I can know someone by looking at two things without ever meeting them. He said, I can look at their calendar and I can look at their bank account.
Mm.
Those two things will tell more about a person than even talking to them. And so for me, let's start with marriage. I think what has been so important, and we did not do this right in the beginning. Okay. But my husband and I were best friends, but we were best friends before we got married. And then we got married and we didn't have kids for 4 years on purpose. Okay. So we were 9 years without kids, together for 9 years without kids. And I think when kids come in the picture, so many times you can lose yourselves. You can lose what sort of is the foundation of who you were as a couple. We quickly realized that if we don't have a consistent date night on the schedule, that we will quickly drift apart. And so first and foremost, it's looking at the calendar. So if I were to look at your calendar right now, where is that priority? And so for me, it's every Thursday night. Without fail, we have a date night without the kids. And in the beginning, it was hard because all we wanted to do was talk about the kids. I think that's also like, your most common love is like
right.
the humans
Your
you
children.
created.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so like, but that's hard because that was never what we used to talk about before. Right. And so like now we try to catch put each other in check when it's like, we've just spent an hour talking about our children, let's talk about us. Like, and so number one is date night. And then number two, with the family, for me, so much of it is counterbalance. And I think counterbalance is not talked about enough, but balance, especially as a female entrepreneur, female empire builder, balance is just a myth. It's a lie. And the more that you search for balance, the more discouraged you're going to get. The number one question I get asked is, how do you do it all? And the truth is I don't. That's the answer, is I don't. I've had to learn to hire. I've had to learn to be a master of hiring. And part of it, I had this conversation with Gary on stage at Mega Camp a few years ago, because I said so many times, you look at the Millionaire Real Estate Agent model, and I follow models. Like I don't like to recreate a wheel. And I have followed the MREA model, and I struggled with the profit model. I struggled with getting to that percentage. And what I realized is, and we have a very profitable business, but what I realized is that typically a female in the model, there's no nanny.
That's
in
right.
the model, there's no like cook. In the model,
house
there's
cleaner, whatever.
Yes. Stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home wife, I like that.
Right.
That's not in the model, but many of us female empire builders, we need to have we have some expenses that we need to leverage things off of our plate so we can be all in when we're with our kids. We say it all the time at Her Best Life. Your kids do not care who cooked the meal. They care that you eat it with them. And I think so many times we try to do all the things, and the reality is that we're not good at all the things. Our family doesn't want us to do all the things. They want us. My kids do not want me the one cleaning the house. They want their mom. They want time with me. And I think the more I can get leverage certain things off my plate, the first thing that most female empire builders have to do is leverage home. That's first.
Yep.
And I think we skip through that and get the assistant at the office. And then we get the assistant at the office, our business starts growing. And then before we know it, that part of our life is failing, right? I mean, it's so, and the one thing when, every time I read it, I get like a little angst when he says, there's one ball that's not rubber.
That's right.
It's glass. And if you give that up, it breaks, right? And I think so many times, to answer the question, it's really focus on hiring, but be okay with also focusing on hiring at home.
Amen.
Making sure everything is in your calendar. I mean, a big part of what gives me joy is taking trips with my family. Not just my immediate family, but my siblings and their kids. All my kids are both Black and white. And my siblings also the same thing. So we have 9 beautifully mixed kids, and that's their tribe. That's their tribe. And so I love traveling with them and them being together. And so the first thing that we do every year is we plan at least 6 trips. And where I'm all in with my family, right? And then sometimes I have to do some big sprints at work to get the all in with the family. So I think counterbalance is a big part of it, but it's got to be on the calendar. Get those family trips on the calendar, get those family dates on the calendar, get the date nights on the calendar. And that's number 1, is make sure your calendar reflects those things first. Yeah. Then you put your business around those things, I
love that. Sarah, last question I'm going to ask you, because we're out of time. What are you most excited about in the future?
Ooh, most excited about. I could name a lot of things. I'm most excited just to see God's plan for me and my people's lives in terms of impact. I don't know, I don't know what it is right now exactly, but I know that God has a bigger purpose for me and my team in our industry. Yeah. And I can feel it in all of my being that there is a big plan and that we are meant to make a bigger impact. We're making an impact right now, but it's meant to be bigger. Our industry is under attack right now, fully under attack. The role of the realtor, the value of the realtor is under attack. I know that God has a plan for my role in saving the value of a realtor and really shining the light on what we do every day. I don't know what that is, but I'm excited to find out. And every day I wake up and that's what I'm working towards. And then it's not just me, it's my entire team family. And so I'm excited for what's ahead and to see that sort of play out. I know that Via says you don't have to know all the staircases. You don't know but you just know when to take the next step. And so every day I'm like, okay, what's my next step towards that? And I know one day it will be very clear. But yeah, that's what I'm most excited about.
That's all. What a great answer. I love that answer. Well, Sarah, I know we are out of time. I just want to thank you so much for juggling your schedule to give us your time today. I know a lot of people will be inspired by you. And how can people follow you, or what's the best way to research more about you and what you're building?
Yeah. So I'm on Facebook, but I am at the 5,000 limit, which I hate that they have that.
I know, me too.
Yeah. But I'm also on Instagram, and they don't limit Instagram. And so it's Sarah Reynolds, and then Oji, which is my married name, OJI, is my handle on Instagram. You can message me on either Facebook or Instagram if you need anything. You also can Google. There's a lot of content out there. I get asked a lot of questions. We've done multiple webinars on the Pivot Shift Ahead Facebook group. And so if you want to know more about what we do, you can find stuff there. You can find stuff online. But we would love to help you and create more relationships. That's what I'm all about. And so on Instagram, Facebook, all the ways. And I'm at every KW event there is.
You are, and you're a shining star in our company. And I just want to thank you for your leadership and your inspiration. And I know a lot of people will be inspired to live a bigger life and a more authentic life and a more happy life after hearing this. So thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Happy holidays.
Yes. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, okay. Merry Christmas. Thank you so much, my dear. Appreciate you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye, Sarah.